Rachel Morrison had been a social worker for 12 years, and she thought she'd seen the worst humanity had to offer. Child neglect, domestic violence, addiction tearing families apart. But nothing prepared her for what she'd discover in the spring of 2023, or how hard the system would fight to keep her from exposing the truth. It started with a routine case assignment on a Monday morning in Phoenix. Rachel worked for the state's Department of Child Safety, handling cases of at-risk youth. Her supervisor, a man named Gerald Hayes, who'd been with the department for 20 years, dropped a thin file on her desk. New case. 15-year-old girl, multiple runaway reports, foster placement keeps failing. See if you can figure out what's going on with her. Rachel opened the file and saw a school photo of a girl named Destiny Brooks. Dark eyes that looked far older than 15. A smile that didn't reach those eyes. Rachel scheduled a meeting with Destiny at her current group home. When she arrived, the staff told her Destiny had been gone for 3 days. Another runaway. They seemed annoyed but not particularly worried. She does this all the time, shows up eventually. Rachel's instincts tingled. A 15-year-old girl keeps running away and nobody's concerned about where she's going or what might be happening to her. Rachel insisted they call the police to file a missing persons report. The staff reluctantly agreed. 2 days later, police found Destiny at a motel on the outskirts of Phoenix. She was with a 28-year-old man who claimed to be her boyfriend. Destiny was brought back to the group home, and Rachel was called to interview her. The girl sat across from Rachel in a small office, arms crossed, defensive. "I'm not talking to you. I don't need another social worker telling me what to do with my life." Rachel kept her voice gentle. "Destiny, I'm not here to judge you. I just want to understand what's happening. The man you were with, how did you meet him?" Destiny's expression shifted slightly. Something that looked like fear flickered across her face before the defensive mask came back. "He's my boyfriend. We're in love. You wouldn't understand." Rachel leaned forward. "Try me. Help me understand." For a moment, Destiny seemed like she might open up. Then she shook her head. "I'm not saying anything. I want to go back to my room." Rachel had to let her go, but something about the interaction bothered her. The fear in Destiny's eyes, the scripted quality of her answers, the way she'd said "boyfriend," like she was reciting lines. Rachel dug deeper into Destiny's file. What she found was disturbing. Destiny had been in state custody for 3 years, since her mother died of an overdose. She'd been placed in 7 different foster homes and group homes. Each placement ended with her running away. Each time she was found with an older man. Each time the case was closed with notes about relationship issues and behavioral problems. Rachel pulled up the police reports from each incident. Different men, different motels, but a pattern was emerging. Rachel spent her evening doing something she wasn't supposed to do. She ran background checks on the men Destiny had been found with. Every single one had prior arrests, drug possession, assault, and in 2 cases, solicitation. Rachel's stomach turned. This wasn't a girl with boyfriend problems. This was a girl being trafficked, and somehow nobody in the system had connected the dots. Or worse, someone had connected them and chosen to look away. The next morning, Rachel went to her supervisor with her findings. Gerald Hayes barely looked up from his computer. "Morrison, you're overthinking this. The girl's a troubled teen who makes bad choices. We can't save everyone." Rachel couldn't believe what she was hearing. "Gerald, look at this pattern. 7 placements, 7 runaways, always with adult men with criminal records. This is textbook trafficking. Gerald finally looked at her, his expression annoyed. You've been watching too many crime shows. Not every troubled kid is a trafficking victim. File your report and move on to your other cases. But Rachel couldn't move on. She requested to meet with Destiny again, this time taking a different approach. She didn't ask about the men or the runaways. She asked about Destiny's dreams, her interests, what she wanted for her future. Slowly, the defensive walls started to crack. Destiny talked about wanting to be a veterinarian when she was younger, how she loved animals, how her mum used to take her to the zoo before the drugs took over, how she felt invisible in the system, just another file number. Then, Rachel asked a simple question. Destiny, do you feel safe? The girl's eyes filled with tears. For the first time, the mask completely fell away. No, she whispered. I haven't felt safe in 3 years. Rachel took her hand gently. Tell me what's happening. I promise I'll listen. I promise I'll believe you. And Destiny started talking. She talked for 2 hours, and Rachel's blood ran colder with every word. Destiny's story was a nightmare. After her mother's death, she'd been placed in a foster home where the older foster brother had assaulted her. She'd reported it, but nothing happened. She was moved to a group home, where she met a girl named Crystal, who seemed cool, seemed like she had everything figured out. Crystal introduced Destiny to a man she called her boyfriend, Marcus. Marcus was nice at first, bought her things, made her feel special, told her she was beautiful. Then he introduced her to his friends. Then the friends wanted to spend time with her. Then Marcus wasn't asking anymore. Destiny tried to tell a social worker at the group home. The social worker said she was making up stories for attention. She tried to tell her caseworker. The caseworker said she needed to stop associating with bad influences. Nobody listened. Nobody believed her. So Destiny kept running, kept trying to get away. But Marcus always found her. He'd threatened to hurt Crystal if Destiny didn't come back. He'd threatened to post pictures of her online. He'd tell her that nobody wanted her anyway, that she was damaged goods, that he was the only one who cared. Rachel listened with tears streaming down her face. This child had been screaming for help in every way she knew how, and the system had labeled her a problem and looked away. Destiny, how many other girls are there? Girls like Crystal? Destiny looked at the floor. A lot. Maybe 10 or 15 that I have met. Some are in foster care like me. Some are runaways. Marcus has lots of girls, and he's not the only one. There are other men who work with him. They move us around to different places. Rachel knew she was sitting on something massive. This wasn't one predator. This was an organized trafficking network, and some of these girls were in state custody, which meant the Department of Child Safety had unknowingly been feeding victims to traffickers. Rachel documented everything Destiny told her, recording the conversation with Destiny's permission. Then she went straight to her supervisor's office. She played him the recording. She showed him her research. She demanded immediate action. Gerald Hayes listened to about 5 minutes of the recording before holding up his hand. Stop. Rachel, you recorded a minor without proper authorization. This is inadmissible and probably illegal. You've compromised the entire case. Rachel felt like she'd been slapped. Inadmissible? Gerald, this is a child telling us she's being sex trafficked. We need to contact police immediately. We need to get all these girls to safety. Gerald stood up, his face red. What we need is for you to stop playing detective. You've overstepped your authority. I'm taking you off this case effective immediately. Rachel couldn't believe it. "You're taking me off the case? A child just disclosed active trafficking and you're worried about recording permissions." Gerald's voice was ice cold. "I'm worried about you creating a legal nightmare for this department. You will not contact Destiny Brooks again. You will not investigate this matter further. You will return to your assigned cases and leave this alone. That's a direct order." Rachel walked out of his office shaking with rage and disbelief. Something was very wrong here. A supervisor doesn't shut down a trafficking disclosure unless there's a reason to keep it quiet. Rachel did what she knew she'd probably get fired for. She went to the police herself, not the regular channels, but directly to a detective she knew who specialized in human trafficking cases. Detective Maria Santos listened to everything Rachel had, watched the recorded interview with Destiny, and her expression grew darker by the minute. "Rachel, this is big, really big. If what this girl is saying is true, we're talking about a trafficking ring that's been operating for years. But I need to be honest with you. Going around your department like this, you're going to face serious consequences." Rachel met Maria's eyes. "I know, but what am I supposed to do? Let these girls keep being trafficked because my supervisor doesn't want the department to look bad." Maria nodded slowly. "Okay, I'm in. Let's take these bastards down. But you need to be prepared for what's coming. This kind of thing, this level of institutional failure, people will want to bury it, and they'll try to bury you with it." Rachel thought about Destiny's face, about the other girls still out there suffering. "I'm prepared. Let's do this." Over the next 2 weeks, Rachel and Detective Santos worked together in secret. Rachel used her access to state systems to identify other girls with similar patterns in their files. Girls who'd run away repeatedly, always found with adult men, always labeled as behavioral problems. She found 13 cases that matched the pattern. 13 girls who'd been trafficked right under the department's nose. Maria started surveillance on the men Destiny had named, building a criminal case. Rachel knew she was violating every department policy, but she didn't care anymore. The system had failed these children catastrophically. Someone had to actually protect them. She spent her evenings and weekends on this investigation, telling her department she was working on her regular caseload. She interviewed girls who'd aged out of foster care, finding more victims. She tracked down former social workers who'd raised concerns about similar cases and been silenced. A picture was emerging of systematic negligence at best or active cover-up at worst. Then, Rachel found something that made everything make terrible sense. She was reviewing old case files when she noticed something odd. Multiple cases involving suspected trafficking had been closed by the same person. Not a caseworker, but an administrator. Someone high up in the department who had the authority to override caseworker recommendations. Rachel dug deeper and found that this administrator, a man named Robert Chen, who'd been with the department for 15 years, had personally closed or redirected over 30 cases that had trafficking indicators. 30 cases, 30 girls. Rachel brought this information to Detective Santos. Maria's reaction confirmed Rachel's worst fears. "I know Robert Chen. He's been on our radar before for other reasons. Nothing we could prove but whispers. Rumors about him being too friendly with some of the foster care placement agencies. Rachel, if Chen's involved, this goes way deeper than we thought." Rachel felt sick. "You think he's part of the trafficking ring?" Maria's expression was grim. "I think he's been protecting it. Maybe for money, maybe for other reasons. But yeah, I think he's dirty." The investigation moved fast after that. Detective Santos brought in the FBI. With federal involvement, they could move without worrying about local corruption. They raided 4 locations simultaneously, arresting Marcus and 6 other men involved in the trafficking operation. They recovered 11 girls, including Destiny and Crystal. The evidence was overwhelming. Text messages coordinating the movement of girls, financial records showing payments, testimony from victims. It was an open and shut case. The traffickers were going to prison for a very long time. Rachel thought that was the end of it. The girls were safe. The bad guys were caught. Justice was served. She had no idea that her nightmare was just beginning. 3 days after the arrests, Rachel was called into the department director's office. The director, a woman named Patricia Michaels, sat behind her desk with Gerald Hayes and Robert Chen flanking her. Rachel's stomach dropped seeing Chen there. Patricia's voice was cold and professional. "Miss Morrison, it has come to our attention that you conducted an unauthorized investigation, accessed confidential files without proper clearance, and collaborated with law enforcement without departmental approval." Rachel couldn't believe Chen had the audacity to be in this meeting. "Director Michaels, with all due respect, I uncovered a trafficking ring that was victimizing children in our custody. Robert Chen personally closed cases that would have exposed this operation years ago. He should be under investigation, not sitting in this meeting." Patricia's expression didn't change. "Mr. Chen has explained that he closed those cases based on the information available at the time. His judgment calls were within his authority. Your actions, however, were not. You violated client confidentiality, exceeded your scope of practice, and created massive liability for this department." Rachel felt the room spinning. Liability? We saved 11 children from being sex trafficked. Gerald Hayes spoke up. "You also recorded a minor without proper consent, which may make that evidence inadmissible in court. You accessed files you weren't authorized to view. You conducted investigations that should have been handled by law enforcement from the beginning. Your reckless behavior could compromise the entire criminal case." Rachel looked at Robert Chen, who sat there calmly, not saying a word. He knew they were protecting him. He knew the department would sacrifice her to avoid admitting their own failures. Patricia slid a document across the desk. "This is your termination letter. Effective immediately. You're being dismissed for gross misconduct, violation of client confidentiality, and insubordination. Security will escort you from the building. You have 1 hour to collect your personal belongings." Rachel stared at the letter, the words blurring. "You're firing me for saving children?" Patricia stood up. "We're terminating your employment for violating departmental policy. This meeting is over." Rachel was escorted from the building like a criminal. 12 years of service, hundreds of children helped, cases closed successfully. None of it mattered. She'd exposed something the department wanted to keep buried, and they were making her pay for it. Rachel sat in her car in the parking lot, trying to process what had just happened. Her phone rang. It was Detective Santos. "Rachel, I just heard. I'm so sorry. This is wrong on every level." Rachel's voice was hollow. "They fired me. They're protecting Chen. They're going to bury this. But Maria had different news. Not if I can help it. The FBI is expanding their investigation. They're looking into Chen and into departmental failures. Your testimony is going to be crucial. And Rachel, the media's gotten wind of this. Multiple outlets are asking questions about how a trafficking ring operated for years while children in state custody were victimized. This is going to blow up." Rachel felt the first spark of hope. Good. Let it blow up. These children deserve justice. And so do the next kids who would have been victims if we'd stayed quiet." The story hit the news 2 days later. Social worker fired after exposing trafficking ring ran on every local station. Then it went national. The narrative was damning. A social worker discovers that children in state custody are being sex trafficked. She investigates when her supervisors ignore her concerns. She works with police to take down the trafficking ring and save 11 girls. And the state's response is to fire her and try to cover up their institutional failures. Public outrage was immediate and massive. Rachel did interviews with every outlet that asked. She told Destiny's story with the girls' permission. She talked about the pattern of failures, about Robert Chen closing cases, about being ordered to stay quiet. She held nothing back. The Department of Child Safety's phones were overwhelmed with angry calls. Protests were organized outside their offices. State legislators demanded investigations. The governor called for a complete review of the department's practices. Robert Chen was placed on administrative leave within a week. The FBI investigation uncovered financial records showing he'd received over $200,000 in payments from companies connected to the trafficking operation. He'd been paid to look the way, to close cases, to ensure the predators had access to vulnerable children. He was arrested and charged with conspiracy, child endangerment, and accepting bribes. Gerald Hayes was also placed under investigation for his role in trying to shut down Rachel's concerns. The criminal trial of the traffickers became a national story. Destiny testified, brave and clear-eyed, telling the jury about her years of abuse and the system's failures to protect her. Other girls testified too. The evidence was overwhelming. All 7 men were convicted and sentenced to lengthy prison terms. Marcus, the ringleader, got 40 years. Robert Chen was convicted in a separate trial and sentenced to 25 years. Gerald Hayes lost his job but avoided criminal charges by cooperating with investigators. Rachel became an unexpected advocate. She was invited to testify before the state legislature about systemic reforms needed in child welfare. She consulted with other states on identifying and preventing trafficking of foster youth. She wrote articles and gave speeches, but she also struggled. She had no income, legal bills from defending herself, and trauma from the entire ordeal. Some days she wondered if speaking up had been worth the personal cost. Then something unexpected happened. A national child advocacy organization offered Rachel a position as their director of trafficking prevention. The salary was double what she'd made at the state. The platform was enormous. She'd be able to influence policy across the country, train social workers, create protocols to prevent what had happened in Phoenix from happening elsewhere. Rachel accepted, feeling like maybe all the pain had led her exactly where she was meant to be. 6 months after her firing, Rachel received a letter from the Arizona Department of Child Safety. It was an apology, a formal official apology acknowledging that they had wrongfully terminated her employment, that her actions had saved children's lives, and that the department was implementing sweeping reforms based on her recommendations. They offered her full back pay and the opportunity to return to her position if she wished. Rachel read the letter twice, then filed it away. She'd moved on to something bigger. Rachel visited Destiny at her new placement, a specialized facility for trafficking survivors. The girl was in therapy, working through her trauma, slowly healing. When she saw Rachel, she ran over and hugged her tight. "You saved my life. You actually listened when nobody else would." Rachel hugged her back, tears in her eyes. "You saved yourself, Destiny. You were brave enough to tell the truth. I just made sure people heard it." Destiny pulled back, smiling for real this time. "I'm going back to school. I want to be a social worker like you. I want to help other kids like me." Rachel felt her heart swell. "You're going to be amazing at it. You'll understand these kids in ways most social workers never could. You'll be their voice like I tried to be yours." Destiny nodded seriously. "I'll be like you. I'll break the rules if I have to. I'll protect them even when the system says not to." 1 year after everything started, Rachel stood in front of a room full of social workers at a national conference. She told them Destiny's story. She told them about the trafficking ring, about the institutional failures, about the cost of speaking up, and the cost of staying silent. "I lost my job for doing what we're all supposed to do, protect vulnerable children. And I'd do it again, without hesitation. Because at the end of the day, rules and policies and procedures, they're tools to help us protect children. But when those tools fail, when the system breaks down, we have a higher obligation. We have to be willing to stand up, even when it costs us everything." The room was silent. Then one social worker stood up and started clapping. Then another. Then the entire room was on their feet, applauding. Many were crying. Rachel saw in their faces the same struggle she'd faced, the tension between following the rules and doing what's right. After her speech, dozens of social workers came up to her. Some shared their own stories of times they'd seen something wrong and felt powerless to act. Others thanked her for giving them the courage to trust their instincts. One young social worker, fresh out of school, said, "You're the kind of social worker I want to be." The reforms Rachel had pushed for were slowly being implemented across the country. Mandatory trafficking screening for all foster youth, independent oversight of cases involving repeated runaways, whistleblower protections for social workers who report concerns. It wasn't enough. It would never be enough. But it was a start. And 11 girls who would have continued being trafficked were safe. That mattered more than anything. Rachel still struggled sometimes. She had nightmares about what might have happened if she'd stayed silent. She carried guilt about the years those girls suffered while the system failed them. But she also carried the memory of Destiny's smile, of the other girls slowly rebuilding their lives, of the changes that were making the system better. She'd paid a high price for doing what was right, but the alternative, staying silent and letting children suffer, would have cost her soul. 2 years after her firing, Rachel was invited to the White House. A new federal initiative on combating child trafficking was being announced, and Rachel was recognized as one of the advocates who'd helped shape the policy. Standing in that room, surrounded by lawmakers and advocates and survivors, Rachel thought about the Monday morning when a thin file had landed on her desk. The case of a troubled 15-year-old girl that nobody wanted to deal with. That case had changed everything, had cost her job, her sense of security, her belief in the system she'd dedicated her life to. But it had also saved lives, had exposed corruption, had forced change, had given Rachel a purpose bigger than she'd ever imagined. She looked around the room and saw survivors of trafficking who were now advocates themselves, young people who'd been through hell and come out fighting for others. That's what mattered, not the awards or recognition or apologies from institutions that had failed. What mattered was that children who'd been invisible were finally being seen, finally being protected, finally being heard. Rachel's phone buzzed with a text from Destiny. The girl was now 17, doing well in school, preparing to apply to college. The message was simple. Saw you on the news. Proud of you. Thanks for never giving up on us. Rachel smiled through tears and typed back, "Proud of you too. You're going to change the world." And she believed it. Because if one social worker could take on a corrupt system and win, imagine what a whole generation of survivors could do. The fight wasn't over. There were still children being trafficked, still systems failing them, still people choosing to look away rather than face uncomfortable truths. But Rachel had learned that one person speaking up, one person refusing to be silenced, one person willing to risk everything for what's right, that could change everything. It had changed her life. It had changed Destiny's life. And it would keep changing lives as long as there were people brave enough to stand up and fight. If Rachel's story made you angry, if it made you want to fight for children who can't fight for themselves, then I need you to subscribe right now. Because next week, I'm bringing you the story of the detective who uncovered corruption so deep it went all the way to the top. And what they did to silence him will leave you speechless. The ending will give you chills. Drop a comment and tell me, would you have risked everything like Rachel did? Would you have stayed silent or spoken up? Hit that like button and let's keep exposing the truth about broken systems that need fixing. See you next week.